Alright, so the reason I want to make this video is because I was recently informed by that Crystal Faggot and Sketchy Scratch that, and I'll have their links in the description, I'll have a lot of links in the description, trust me, that this video up here in the top right corner is, it uses fake samples, and it doesn't use fake samples inherently, it uses a technique called granular sampling to make the samples sound fake. And I'll explain briefly what granular sampling is. It's a branch of granular synthesis. It just deals with samples, and it's where you loop something so short that it starts to gain a pitch that you can use in a video. And if you do it wrong, it sounds nothing like the original sample. In fact, you can do it with like a non-melodic source, like a snare or a kick drum. You can make them have a pitch, and use them as instruments if you want to. Not that I ever would do that, that's kind of dumb, but with melodic samples you can use granular synthesis in such a way that it sounds exactly like the original sample, except it's a lot cleaner because of what granular sampling is inherently. So let me load up a sample here. This is, let me just get rid of that. This is Rarity's At the Gala sample, complete with the entire pitch modulation. I'll open it up in Edison here, and I'll open up Pro Q so we can watch it. Let's play it again. So there's the sample, and what granular synthesis will do, let's see if I can find a good sample here. Alright, so here we got a sample. I could have spent more time and probably gotten a better one, but whatevs. It's just for the purpose of this tutorial. I have no intention of using this sample ever in the future. And so if I was lazy, I'd do this, and you'd end up with this. And so it sounds nothing like the original sample, and that's what I think, that's personally what I think they're talking about when they say the word fake. If I play the whole sample again, it's still the exact same sample, it's just, it sounds nothing like it. And so that's why I would say the word fake, but I think a more adequate word would be cheating, to be honest, because it's a little bit less confusing when you say it that way. I mean, it's cheating. You're taking the sample and you're editing it in such a way that sounds nothing like the original sample, but it also sounds a lot better because that's what granular synthesis is, or sampling, excuse me. But if you do it like this, where you have this sort of waveform and you take one waveform, the sort of oscillation, I guess, and I'll play it. You can hear it sounds really clean, but if I play the whole sample, it sounds pretty much the same in my opinion. The only difference is there's no pitch modulation and there's no volume modulation. That's why I like granular synthesis. It allows you to have sort of perfect samples to work with, and from there I can use attack and release envelopes, and I can use reverb and whatever, and the volume will remain constant throughout, no matter what I do to the audio from this point. And I don't understand how that's considered fake. I mean, technically speaking, even using the crappy technique to make it sound different, it's still the original sample, and no amount of audio editing. I mean, I could distort this sample beyond all possible recognition, and it would still be the original sample, and I could put on a trollface.ping and say, haha, this is real, in your face, whatevs. I'm not like that. But looping it like this is just a technique I like because it makes the thing perfect to work with in a sort of DAW environment. I've seen a couple other techniques, like I know Scrub Noob has the tutorial where you use Melodyne, and let me just reload the same sample up real quick. You take this pitch knob, you double click it, that makes it pitch perfect on the B. It was actually slightly lower. Then you use the pitch modulation, you double click it again, voila. It was already pretty perfect. I mean, you can see here there's barely any modulation, but there is modulation. That's what makes it sound, you know, like a human. And this vibrato, by the way, is very beautiful. I'd almost say it's fake too. That'd be pretty funny if the show's producers were using fake samples or fake vibrato effects or whatever. Anyway, but that's beside the point. How is this not fake? How is this not fake? Like, seriously. If you can consider granular sampling fake, I don't understand how this isn't. The only difference between this and granular sampling is this has volume modulation over a period of time, which makes it sound more human, I admit, but I mean, when I eventually loop just this bit, which doesn't have the vibrato part, it's not going to be something extremely noticeable. And so I just don't understand how I can use this Melodyne, which does make it sound completely different. I mean, if I move the pitch up, like way up, let's move it extremely up. Sounds nothing like the original sample. I mean, you are editing it, and when you edit the audio, it sounds different than the original. That's why you edit it. You want to make it sound better. And I would personally use this all day, except that I consider granular sampling a better technique. And just discard that. The only other technique I've seen that I would possibly use is crossfade looping, which if I edited the sample so it didn't have the vibrato section, you can see it's a very beautiful way to loop it in a very quick way as well. That took less effort than this. So I just personally, I don't see how this is fake. I have every intention of continuing to use it because I consider it a good technique, a good and legitimate technique. And I mean, unless I'm told otherwise, unless this really sounds fake to you, and it doesn't sound fake to me, but it sounds, if it sounds fake, I don't know what to say. I mean, you could say something about this sort of sine wave that appears here at 500 hertz, but in the original sample, there it is. You can see it, the 500 hertz sine wave that's there in all human samples. The only difference between granular sampling and the original sample is you remove the pitch modulation and the volume modulation. That's why I like using it. And I mean, even if you wanted to be one way I guess I could do this to where it'll still sound real is include a bit of the audio like this, a couple 100 milliseconds of audio, and then loop it like so. Let's just make sure this sounds good, because if you get it even off slightly, it sounds awful. Like, here we go. Stop. I want to hold it. Dang it. Gotta catch it. I gotta catch it. Got it. Starts adding all these harmonics and stops sounding real. But if you add that little bit on the beginning, it gives it a sort of punch where it's still human. It has the pitch modulation, and then you have the granular sampling to make it a workable sample. I would consider using that instead, and just cutting off that bit. But I see no reason not to use granular sampling in the future, so I'll leave it at that. I'll be looking intently on the reaction to this video. If it's really bad to use granular sampling, which I don't consider it bad, I'll stop using it. I'm a reasonable person. I can use Melodyne, I can use crossfade looping. It's all audio techniques. I don't see how it's any different from granular sampling. It's just another audio technique. But I guess if you guys really wanted me to, I mean, it's not crucial to my work that I have granular sampling. I just do it as a formality because it sounds better. Stop it, Lucy. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you for watching, and just goodbye.